What's this all about? Why are they doing that? What's going on here?
It's Curious John. What is he curious about today?
Consider the rice noodle. It's something people here eat all the time. But while that may be so, they still make a point of visiting the town of Longgang to eat them. Taiwan may be home to many kinds of noodles, but none of them are quite like the noodles you'll find here. Longgang's rice noodles are called migan. They have a unique stringy texture, a bit like smooth nylon or silk. They are such an important part of Longgang's culture that people here put on an annual festival dedicated to them. But migan aren't originally from here. They come from the borderlands between China and Southeast Asia, a place called the Golden Triangle. The festival is also about remembering the story of how these noodles and the people who make them came to Taiwan. Until a few years ago, Ryan Gillis had never thought much of anything about rice noodles. But since moving here from the UK, he's become something of an expert, and he'll be our guide today. He's come dressed for the part, wearing traditional clothing from Yunnan province on China's southwest frontier. We begin our tour from the food court.
We have everything here from Yunnan-style pancakes to Thai desserts. Because of the proximity of the Golden Triangle to India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, places like that, you can also find a lot of samosas and curries. This is a bit of green bean jelly that they either deep fry or they eat it. Oh, you're sold out.
Sold out. What is it about the flat, chewy mi gan and mi xian, their rounder cousin, that brings people from all over Taiwan here?
Last time I saw on a list, there were at least 60 or 70 different migan and mixian restaurants in this neighborhood alone. They're all made from pure rice. It's just rice and water. They grind it up and then they sort of steam it out into a plate. And then they dice it. So there's nothing else in there but rice. So you have to eat it very quick, otherwise it goes off. So we have the migan, and then of course the thinner ones as well, which are mixian. So it depends if you want a fat noodle or a thin noodle.
How would you describe them? I've just had them for the first time. I'm sure you've had them many times.
Yes.
I'm still processing.
Okay.
It's very unlike anything I've ever had before. How would you describe it?
It's I don't know if you remember, perhaps, certainly me and you coming from the West, you know, perhaps rice is not our staple food.
Not so
and when
much.
you're a child, that first time you eat just that pure white rice, you know, and to you it's one of the best tasting things in the world. It's just so pure and it's so ricey, can I say ricey? And likewise, because the migan and the mixian, it's just pure rice, there's nothing added to it. So it's a different texture, most definitely.
Right, that's what popped out.
A little, if you would describe it as squiggly, that's not really a very good way of making it sound tasty.
It felt like me like as though you were trying to eat silk almost. It's very silky.
Yeah, it's very silky, it's very smooth.
Yunnan province is home to 25 of China's 55 ethnic minorities. Ryan says that ethnic boundaries are blurred in Yunnan, and that these official groups may be lumping many different peoples together. Which groups can you find here? And how did Longgang become their home? The story begins at the end of the Chinese Civil War.
It's a very special story, actually. It's a grouping of the Lost Army, which was the 93rd Division of the Nationalist Forces. Towards the end of the Civil War, when everybody retreated to Taiwan, they instead retreated south into the mountains of Myanmar, where they set up their home temporarily in order to hopefully one day retake the mainland.
Right.
That didn't happen.
No.
So while they were there, they eventually had to resort to a number of ways to continue their efforts. So they worked on cultivating opium, which gave rise to the famous Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle. Yunnan province is one of the highest concentrations of ethnic minorities in China. And equally so, Myanmar and Thailand also have a lot of ethnic minorities in that region as well. So while they were there, they met the local communities, they befriended them, they married them. And eventually, they were repatriated back to Taiwan. So that's why they're here now. You get a very wide mix of patriotic, prideful Chinese spirit combined with such colorful cultures. So to try and name a few, we have Hani peoples, Akha peoples, Jingpo, Lisu, Lahu, Dai peoples. There are also groupings from around the rest of Yunnan as well, spreading all the way up to Tibet. If I were to hazard a guess, there are at least 50 different sort of ethnic minorities here today. Yeah, only here in the festival. But of course that spreads even further.
The generations born in Longgang since then belong to here, but there are reminders of their ancestors' cultures everywhere. This is especially true here at the festival's home in the Yunnan Cultural Park. Ryan shows me one of the park's art installations with a lot of symbolism for people here. It looks like a series of concrete totem poles.
These are sword ladders. Each set of mosaic tiles represents a different grouping, and traditionally at the Sword Ladder Festival there would be actual physical swords placed in the side. These ones are concrete, but originally there would be wooden pillars with swords in the side, and the men of the village would climb them like a ladder to test their faith and their spirit and their strength and endurance.
The sharp end?
Yeah, the sharp end.
Grabbing onto the sharp end.
Yeah, grabbing onto the sharp end.
So
yeah.
not something health and safety would allow.
No, health and safety would definitely not allow that. So hence the fact that these particular pillars have no swords.
All right. I ask Ryan how he became involved in this festival. I also ask him to introduce the clothes he's wearing today.
My connection is by chance, I would say. When I was still in England, I'd barely heard of Taiwan. My future wife was there studying a master's in fashion design, women's wear. And I was working in London at the same time. We met, and you know, as true love follows, you know, we eventually came together. And after a little while in England, we both decided it's time for a new adventure. And family here were calling and saying, you know, we really want you to come back. And it didn't feel like a pressure. We felt like, yeah, we should go back and we should help them and try and do as best as we can. So here we are now. When you certainly look around the festival today, you can see a lot of ethnic influence, but you can also see something that makes it a little more modern, but still preserving it. My clothes, for instance, are a very peculiar mix, actually. I tried to combine everything. The sash here is a very typical Yunnanese style sash, again with the silver studs on. Very bright red with a bit of black and the embroidered coloured fabrics. But I've kind of put a Western style tweak on it. So I try to take a little bit of what they have that I love and what I bought from England that I love and mash it together.
Is this one of your wife's works?
She could have done it, but she had very little time, so she designed it for me and handed it over to a tailor. The tailor happens to be her aunt, so it's all still part of the family.
All in the family.
Yeah, all in the family. There were certain things I wanted to put on my clothes that she said, no, that is not fashionable. Overruled, you can't have that.
If you were listening carefully just now, you might have noticed this sound. That's right, Morse code. Chinese Morse code. But what does Morse code have to do with noodles?
This particular exhibit here represents the Lost Army that journeyed from Yunnan into the hills of Myanmar and Thailand. This individual here is a former soldier, but he was a former soldier with the intelligence services, and he's here specifically today to showcase the Morse code equipment that you can probably hear on the recording just there,
right,
the beeping away.
Sending some secret messages.
Exactly, they would have communicated secret messages back and forth between the Golden Triangle and Taiwan to communicate troop movements, or perhaps even just to send messages to loved ones.
How might Chinese Morse code work? The answer is in a green code book set down by the old radio equipment.
These would have been secret to each individual unit, and as you can see there's a whole myriad of pages here, different page numbers, and then a grid of numbers from 0 through to 9 across and then down. So they would Morse code a page number, and then a vertical number, and then a horizontal number, and that would refer to the Chinese character on the grid.
So this is not the Morse code that you use to send telegrams.
Exactly. They would use these numbers to then reference the code book, where the message would be very much in Chinese. These intelligence operatives would have got to the point where they wouldn't even need to read the book, they would have committed it to memory.
That's thousands and thousands of characters.
Yeah, thousands of characters across so many, there's 99 pages in this book alone. They would have had multiple books.
Longgang's Rice Noodle Festival stretches over 2 weekends. The first weekend is devoted to water, the second to fire. Next time, Ryan will be continuing our tour and explaining what exactly that means. Plus, you won't want to miss the brilliant way Ryan and his brother are helping shy dancers master the steps to some of Yunnan's traditional dances. That's next week on Curious John.
You're listening to Radio Taiwan International. If you have any comments or suggestions about our programs, you can email us at rti@rti.org.tw. tw.